Hi, I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. Very pleased to welcome you to today's webinar, which is entitled How to Build a Secure Hybrid Workplace with SASE. We've got three panelists joining us today. They include Dave Abbott, Technical Solutions Architect, APO Cross Architectures Partner Organization with Cisco, Sebastian Yakubowski, Manager, Network Security with Netrix, and also from Netrix, Rich Lilly, Partner and Director with Security. Now, before I bring the panel onto the screen here, let me give you some background on what we're going to talk about today. Secure Access Service Edge, or SASE as it's known, is a 2-year-old architecture that is rapidly gaining traction among enterprises of all sizes and sectors. Yet it requires proper planning, preparation, and engagement from various teams, including network, security, and most importantly, business leaders and business decision makers. In this session, the perimeter security experts from Netrix and Cisco are going to walk through steps to adopting SASE and how to get the right stakeholders involved, real-world steps and scenarios to properly implementing SASE, and they will help you walk away with clear steps on getting started with your SASE deployment for mobile users and on-premises systems and learn how to properly manage it moving forward. As some background on my organization, Information Security Media Group, we are a global education and intelligence firm, 15 years old, based in Princeton, New Jersey, here in the US. You might know us by one of our 34 media properties. These include Bank Info Security, Healthcare Info Security, and Data Breach Today. In all, we reach an audience of over 1 million security leaders around the world, and we give them a daily diet of news, research, analysis, education, and events just like the one you're attending today. A few notes of housekeeping. If you have any questions for our panel during the course of this session, you can submit them anytime by the chat window on your screen. We won't have time to get to every question, but for those that we don't answer in the course of this session, we will get responses back to you via email. Important to note, if you have any technical issues while viewing today's webinar, take down the email address on your screen. If you write to webinars@ismg.io, we do have technical support staff standing by to help. Also, I do need to emphasize today's webinar is copyrighted material. As such, it's meant for today's session and individual study purposes only. If you would like to use any of the information presented today, or if you're looking for customized training materials, please contact us. It's my pleasure to introduce our sponsor today, Netrix. Netrix is a leading provider of cloud, security, collaboration, ITSM, and application development solutions through both proprietary and managed solutions leveraging leading third-party tools. Netrix addresses the most mission-critical IT needs of mid-sized and enterprise businesses. And to learn more, you can visit netrixllc.com. Now, quickly, let's meet our speakers here. You're going to hear from Dave Abbott. Again, he's a SASE Technical Solutions Architect at Cisco Systems. Been with Cisco for over 5 years. Before transitioning into this role, he was a field sales engineer for several years in South Carolina. You can read more right on the screen here. We'll move on to our other speakers. Sebastian Yakubowski. He joined Netrix in 2015 as a network and security architect with a rich understanding of complex, diverse networks and security solutions, as well as the challenges around their design, implementation, and support. Again, you can read more about Sebastian here, as well as on the landing page where you can register for this session. And Rich Lilly, been working in IT and consulting for about 17 years in various positions and roles, led and managed with projects with staff sizes from 5 to 50 members, both consulting and on-site as IT staff. He's also led numerous implementations of the Microsoft System Center line of products, as well as Hyper-V and VMware virtualization deployments. Again, more you can read right here, but for now, let's bring together our panel. Let's have a conversation about SASE. Gentlemen, as they say, start your engines.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and welcome everyone.
I'm really glad to have you all here. Let's start here. Gentlemen, dispel some of the myths. What is SASE? And just as important, what is it not?
So, like any other solutions, right? When the next big thing comes up, right? A lot of customers are hesitated to talk about it, to go through implementations, right? But in a nutshell, SASE is nothing but a cloud-driven security model, right? what SASE allows businesses to provide unified security policy controls and secure access to all the different services, cloud-based application, SaaS, private apps, and all the other business-related services across the decentralized network and also the mobile users, right? Couple myths that I've run into when talking to our customers going through SASE deployments. One of them is complicated, right? It's not. If you look at SASE, right, because it's cloud-based, it's a software-driven, it's much simpler to implement and deploy than any traditional architecture, right? It's too large, right, for a lot of organizations. Maybe, right? Most of the companies, larger enterprises, do not have that problem, right? Small organization, medium organizations are afraid that, hey, it's either too expensive, right? Or it is just too complex for them to manage and deploy. The theory is, small or medium organizations are subject to the same threat as any other companies, right? Small, medium, enterprise, doesn't matter. Another thing with SASE, right, with all the different offerings and options, SASE can be commoditized, right? It can be consumed as a service as any other solution out there, right? O365, any SaaS type architecture, and so on, right? So it's meant for any business size. So the last one is the SASE should start with SD-WAN. The pre-pandemic, right, when pre-COVID-19, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations started SASE deployments with SD-WAN, right, because that was the primary focus. When COVID-19 hit in 2019 and 2020, a lot of companies had to switch, right? Had to adjust their approach to implementation and concentrate on the mobile workforce, right? That was the primary key when it comes to a SASE go-to strategy, right? We had to concentrate on how to secure our users and provide secure access versus how do we interconnect branch offices, data centers, and so on. So those are some of the myths that I've personally run into when it comes to working with our customers, my clients, and so on.
And Sebastian, another myth that I typically run into is folks thinking that SASE is this brand new technology, and that's sometimes challenging in itself when you have to consider, well, now I need to learn about it and train my staff on how to support it. And I have to completely re-architect my solution. And the truth is, SASE itself, from a technology component standpoint, is not all that new. SD-WAN has been around for years, and cloud security functionalities have been around for years. But what's really grown over the past 2 years, and why SASE is picking up so much steam, is the idea of merging those two capabilities together. I mean, in a nutshell, all SASE is trying to provide is direct access to your applications no matter where they are. And when we look at how applications were deployed before, it was pretty easy to figure out, well, it's mainly on-prem and we can easily access our applications, whether we're on VPN or if I'm on site, I just go over SD-WAN or some type of private network. But now that our applications are living everywhere, whether it's on-prem, hosted, infrastructure as a service, or SaaS applications, we have to be able to provide that ubiquitous access no matter where the application is. And the challenge is traditional security models required that we had to backhaul it all in because that's where our security controls live. And in a nutshell, all we're doing is shifting where that security inspection resides out to a cloud-based service so that I can access my applications no matter where they are. So from a myth standpoint, we look at SASE as this brand new technology, but really we're just taking capabilities we're already used to and shifting it into a cloud-based service.
I'll also add on, I'll double down a little bit on what Sebastian and Dave covered. Sebastian made a great point, which is SASE is neither too small or too big for any organization. Really at the macro level threat landscape out there today, size really doesn't matter. There are some very small organizations that deal with some very specific industries or very specific technologies. They're sometimes just as big of a target as a Fortune 100 when it comes to their specific risk profile. And I think that solutions like this really do scale up and down the breadth, whether you're, the smallest 10-person office or, the largest, 600,000 plus employee company. I think Dave also made a great point as well around kind of that elimination of kind of traditional boundaries. This is something that we've been fighting with, our customers to kind of recognize that, controls can be leveraged anywhere, and they really should be. We started to see a lot of conversation, now, especially around things like zero trust. Tools like SASE are, SASE solutions are really, foundational components for, a proper zero trust architecture.
So, John, devil's advocate here. Why the need for SASE?
Yeah, Tom, I'm happy to take that one. And really, we have to consider for a second what the network has looked like before. So when we look at what the network has been before, the majority of our applications lived in the data center. And we were able to consider that, well, if I need to protect my applications, I'm going to create this boundary around my headquarters or my DC and protect those applications. And then any outbound internet traffic, well, I'm going to send that centrally through those security protections. But because of the shift that's occurred in where our applications live and how we digest our technology today, and then we add COVID to that with everyone working from home now, and the home office is the new office. Well, requiring all my traffic to come into a data center for security when the applications aren't residing there anymore simply doesn't make any more sense. And so what we're looking to do is just leverage technology that's been around, tried, true, tested for years now, but move us into this cloud native model that allows us to go from a hairpinned exercise into this fabric that allows me to have networking and security combinations where I get direct access to my applications no matter where they are. And so when we look at the definition of SASE, it's really reducing the complexity and improving performance by converging connectivity, security, and identity functions together into that cloud native aggregation model. And we're going to be revisiting those three pillars here soon, but it's very important to recognize that we're moving this connectivity security model out to a cloud fabric. And Gartner, Forrester, ESG, they're all really saying the same thing, knowing that Gartner is the one that coined this term SASE back in 2019, but customers have been adopting this model even before then. They were using direct internet access through SD-WAN before SASE was really coined as a term. But what's changed is we have had a massive growth in capabilities in terms of cloud services for security. And there's more confidence than ever in being able to send my application data and my external traffic out through the cloud and be able to have compliance and regulatory needs with security through those cloud services, rather than having to require it all comes back home into my headquarters.
Sebastian, Rich, anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I agree. Actually, I do agree with Dave, right? The traditional approach where everything was backhauled to the data center no longer works today, right? With the ongoing growth of cloud adoption, right? Mobile workforce, right? Even though we are starting to slowly move back to on-prem, right? Users starting to slowly, move back to their offices. There's still that decentralized architecture, right? And it's critical to move those controls from the on-prem, from the traditional architecture to the cloud-based, where we can actually control and provide the level of security right there on the spot versus sending that traffic through the data center. So right on the spot, Dave.
How do you envision the SASE journey? If I could ask a follow-up as well, where does that journey start?
So where does the journey start, right? So like with any other, at least from a Netrix, from my perspective, right? Anytime we go through implementation, right? We do start with more or less envisioning, right? We want to understand what's driving the need, right? Before we're gonna do anything else, Then we go through a proper implementation, right? We want to make sure that the implementation is properly structured, have guidelines, and then also as the solution is implemented, we want to make sure that we provide proper management and support for it, right? That's the only way we can guarantee a proper success, right? SASE should not be treated like a typical product, right? Where you can just unbox it, put it in. It should be treated as a journey. And that starts with envisioning, working with our customers, clients, going through our implementation, and then also ongoing management and support.
Yeah, to add to that, when I have worked with my customers and channels teams in the past around building out solutions for SASE, we usually start in two main realms. And it completely depends on where you are today from a structure perspective in terms of your implementation. So when we look at the use cases around SASE, there's two main ones that we are typically addressing here. We're either starting at the secure remote worker, where we're looking to provide that seamless connection to applications, no matter where they are, but allowing that zero trust type policy around user authentication, device health and biometric data, as well as then understanding the type of traffic you're actually passing to ensure that when you go to those applications from home, that you're doing it securely. And so for many organizations, what they recognized in early 2020 with COVID hitting is, wow, we got to make sure we're up to snuff on our remote worker strategy. And many didn't have one, right? Or there was an exception and not a rule. And so they would buy more firewalls or buy more compute for virtual desktop instances and hope that they could just get everyone's traffic back into the headquarters and act like they were on network. And we thought that that was going to be a short-term fix to a short-term problem. And a year and a half later, here we are, and most people still work from home. And organizations are recognizing now that many of their employees are saying, I'm going to leave if you make me work or come back into the office. And so they're having to come up with this very robust long-term strategy. And the way that our secure remote workers typically were approaching this from a technology standpoint was, let's get endpoint protection and maybe some DNS filtering, but for the most part, we're just going to VPN backhaul all your traffic so we can inspect it. We've recognized that's caused a significant challenge around the digital experience. And we ultimately want to be able to provide the best class of access to our applications, but still do it securely. And that's the shift that's occurring, is rather than just relying on endpoint protection, rather than just relying on a VPN, let's give us a fully deep packet inspection proxy that gets me to my applications, but does it securely. The other side of the house, if we feel confident in our secure remote worker strategy, or we're not ready to take that on yet, is to look at our branches, right? If we have workers that are still working out of the office or starting to return back into the office, and recognizing that requiring that backhaul into the headquarters when the majority of our applications don't live there anymore is not really making sense. And utilizing those direct internet paths that we're paying for to our advantage and letting us get to our outbound applications and our outbound internet paths, but doing it securely. And so there's many organizations that bought SD-WAN or installed it or are currently looking at it and saw, well, there's some on-box security controls, but weren't necessarily considering how much security is actually required when they go directly out to the internet rather than backhauling into a data center. And so with SASE, it's enabling us to be able to utilize those direct internet paths, give us better performance to our applications without compromising the security. So these are the two different routes that we usually take when we're approaching this journey. And the great news is there's a heck of a lot of technology overlap. We use the same components on security on both of these use cases, and SD-WAN comes in with the secure edge and can potentially protect our VIP users if we want to send a device to their house as well. So there's a lot of ways that we can start to approach this conversation in terms of modeling out an architecture, but it ultimately allows us to protect every single one of our users.
I'll add on top of that really quickly as well. I think Dave made a great point, and I think one of the challenges has always been user experience. You know, as he said, I won't say it lightly as well, is that for a new employee to come into an organization, whether it be a Gen Z or someone else, their expectation is almost that, their technology experience, their experience in working from a day-to-day, which is maybe starting completely remotely, which is likely still happening today, needs to be as seamless as them using their iPhone on a day-to-day basis. And that's really, SASE really helps alleviate some of the traditional challenges that, have been faced for years and years in kind of that, hub and spoke type model that we're all used to. And I think by leveraging both technology as well as providing a great user experience, this ultimately, actually helps organizations with retention in this, trying time of everyone working remote and hopefully moving slowly back towards the office.
So, gentlemen, once one understands the business and the technical needs, how does one then approach implementation?
So, from an implementation standpoint, right? If we can just take a step back, I think the crucial part before we can go to implementation is making sure that we have the right solution. That's critical to any SASE journey, right? As we know, there's so many different vendors out there. And one critical part in the journey itself is making sure that the solution itself meets the business requirements, right? That's where we come in from a Netrix perspective. We don't just go in, just select, right? We want to make sure that the product, the solution meets all the different requirements from a network security management and also growth, right? So a lot of times we work with our partners, customers, to do a bake-off, right? To make sure that whatever solution we select, right, is the right solution for our customers. Once we know that we can go into the implementation model. Today, right, we are still remotely. Our approach is still, right, secure the user, right? Implement SASE to concentrate on secure access, securing mobile users, providing secure access to all the different cloud-based applications, implementing zero trust, right? And then as step 3, moving into a secure edge, closing the loop, the circle on SASE type architecture, providing not only secure access to remote users, secure access to all the different services, but also integrating the on-prem infrastructure into the cloud-based security. So that's the approach from an implementation standpoint.
Yeah, Sebastian, I love that word of integration, because I think that's what it all comes down to. And look, I'm going to put on my Cisco hat for a second here as we approach SASE, but I think it really comes down to those 3 pillars we identified earlier of connectivity, security, and identity that have to work together. And what Cisco is able to bring is those 3 pillars united. We continuously are merging these capabilities together so it becomes easier to deploy and implement. Integrations is what's part of what makes SASE extremely powerful. And when we think about SASE, it's a cross-architectural approach, which means that your networking folks and your security folks have to be able to work together on this solution seamlessly. And we saw this as a huge pioneering stage a few years ago around cloud, right? You had your networking teams, security teams, application teams, storage teams, et cetera, all had to come together to figure out their cloud strategy. And SASE is no different. We have to have networking teams, security teams, and app teams working together to make this model fit and to ultimately give us a seamless experience for our end users. The thing is, you don't want to be piecing all that together with your own custom integrations, do you? That adds complexity, and it ultimately could challenge your own implementation teams or your own engineers to be able to secure your infrastructure properly. So when you look at the vendors that are out there, having a solution that can address all 3 of these pillars is absolutely critical. And you have to have an integration between these capabilities. And so what Cisco is looking to bring, and what we continue to put a significant amount of our research and development into, is merging automation of SD-WAN to build secure tunnels into our secure web gateway, as well as integrating zero trust access principles and technologies into those solutions. And then we bring this unified visibility, policy, and integration strategy in together. And so we're able to give you that end-to-end visibility from your end user across your network into the application, so that not only during implementation, you can be assured that your network's performing the way you expect it to, but that you also have day two visibility for any times you might have an outage, or your ISP is having convergence issues, or maybe your cloud application's having problems. That day two visibility integrated across that solution is absolutely critical.
Yeah, one thing that I can add,
Please.
Dave, you hit on it right there. Going back to the how do we approach implementation, right? Like I mentioned, the biggest, I think the critical part of the journey is making sure that the solution, right, has all the features and also can be managed from the same console, right? That's critical. There are a lot of vendors out there, right? You know, offering SASE architecture, SASE solutions, but they're not 100% there, right? Multiple consoles, multiple systems to manage, nothing is centralized, nothing is unified, right? So critical part of SASE is making sure that all those different functions, all those different features can be managed and controlled from the same console across the board.
If we move on beyond implementation, how does a customer transition from the deployment phase to a run and maintain state?
So like with any other security, right? SASE is security, right? So SASE security needs to be dynamic, right? You need staff to manage and provide ongoing support, right? What Netrix brings to the table, we don't just simply hand off the solution to our customers. Our goal is to partner with our customers and augment portion of their staff, right? And assist them with ongoing management and support, and also future growth and changes, right? Because what SASE is today may not be the same thing in a year or 2 years, right? So it is critical to partner with a security or a technology provider that can take the customer not only from a implementation standpoint, but also work with them throughout the process, including management and ongoing support.
And I think when you're looking at continuous support after the original technology is implemented, security is an ever-changing beast. And when you look at the fundamental principles around zero trust, for example, there's two main things that are in a proper zero trust deployment. And that's a policy decision engine and a policy enforcement engine. And you leave the enforcement aspects to the technology and the vendors to be able to give you enforcement points and to be able to give you that automated security intelligence, right? Global intelligence and threat feeds that come into the enforcement points. But that policy decision, right? That is the ultimate policy that you all as infrastructure folks have to consider as security and networking staff. You have to constantly think about what's right for my organization. What level of security do I need to have, not just for regulation and compliance? I mean, that's certainly important, but also from a zero trust perspective, if I'm going to provide least privileged access across my infrastructure, I have to continuously innovate and change my policies. And so a proper SASE solution should ultimately give you an enforcement point that doesn't require much care and feed. The integrations are already there for you from an implementation standpoint, but your majority of time is spent considering what type of policies do I want to instantiate. And that's where partners like Netrix can really help with the consulting of understanding, hey, how do I even approach this? I mean, implementation is one thing, but what type of policies do I actually need to set up? And that's the type of advisement and consultation that's really, really beneficial for organizations as they go through a SASE journey.
I come back to a point that you started making a few moments ago, Dave. What's key to integrating all the core components?
You know, that A standard term is APIs. And some folks get scared by that because they think, whoa, I'm not a programmer. I haven't touched Python since I was doing school or something. And the thing is, the point of integrations is a lot of it should be built out for you. I mean, yes, custom integrations are great. And especially if you're a larger organization and you want to be able to utilize a number of third-party tools and bring it all together, that's fine. But for many organizations, they simply don't have the time nor talent to be able to create those custom integrations. But APIs become the key to be able to bring these technologies and product sets together. And having a vendor that can provide it all and then give you those integrations with a single implementation of a key. And when I go through these demos and setups with customers, it takes about 30 seconds to tie these solutions together, because we're simply taking API credentials between the product sets, bringing them together, and now you've got a unified solution. To me, that's the ultimate goal of what a SASE and a cross-architecture solution should bring.
I'll add on top of that.
Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, so I'll add on top of that as well. I think, you know, a unique item for Netrix specifically as well is when we start talking about an as-a-service model for SASE, you know, for us, an as-a-service is also our SIM and managed SOC services as well. And we've done significant amounts of legwork to bring all that together. I mean, Dave highlighted the biggest challenge, which is really stringing together multiple different product sets and solutions. You know, with Cisco, you've got a really good tight knit integration. That is a key point. Also integrating that with other things like your on-premises logs, like your endpoint logs, et cetera, are all super critical. One of the unique things that we offer in this space as well is being able to bring that all into one place. You know, today you'll hear Gartner and Forrester refer to that as an XDR platform. Really what that is just plumbing together different, you know, hubs of security, intelligence, and information into one place, which, you know, these days is really represented as a SIM, you know, usually which either your internal SOC or, you know, someone like a Netrix SOC hosts. And, you know, we've taken a lot of the legwork out of, you know, some of those APIs, even in addition to, you know, what Cisco offers to bring in really everything into one picture. And I think for, you know, again, the threat landscape we're in today, having that macro level visibility is extremely important.
Yeah, and Dave and Rich, this is actually a great thing. What I want to add to the overall integration part, right? The business portion of SASE is critical as well. In many occasions, what I've run into is organization doesn't, or the individuals implementing SASE, right, does not have a complete buy-in from the decision makers, or even proper support from all the different various teams, right? So I think from a business standpoint, when it comes to integration of SASE in general, I think it is critical for anyone, for any business, any organization, have a complete support, not only from the leadership, but also from all the different team members, right? System security, cybersecurity, and so on. This is the only way you can guarantee successful integration across the board.
Gentlemen, SASE's come far since it was first identified by Gartner just 2 years ago in 2019. Where do you see it headed as we enter 2022, the third year of SASE?
So I think one area that we are seeing is a consolidation of services into a single subscription. Back in 2019, when Gartner first coined this term, it was really, we're putting together best of breed products and trying to stitch it together. And we're seeing a lot of vendor consolidation in this space. I think what we're likely to see moving forward is a couple of key players coming out and hosting a single subscription service that's all cloud hosted, becomes a SD-WAN hub, becomes a VPN hub, and zero trust network access. Speaking of that zero trust network access, I think that's something we're also going to see a lot more adoption of, is that reverse proxy capability getting into our private applications. We know that many folks are moving into public cloud and SaaS type apps, but there's plenty of private applications that still require to be hosted on-prem or by a third-party provider. And in those instances, we typically rely on VPN to get us into that. But zero trust network access gives us a per application basis to get into our applications and utilize zero trust principles to get on a per app. So what that ultimately means is we're moving away from a client VPN type model and into this per application type deployment. And so what we're likely going to see is more and more folks starting to adopt that for their very important applications that still have to exist on-prem and simply can't move to the cloud.
Yeah, and one thing that I can add, as we know, right, pandemic is here, and I don't think it's gonna go away anytime soon. I think, SASE in general, we're gonna continue to concentrate on secure access, right, from a mobile workforce, right, from work from home type scenarios, with a bigger focus on, like David said, on a zero trust and per application control for all the different apps and so on. Customers are continue shifting their workloads into cloud, public cloud, right? Azure, AWS, G Suite, and so on. So I think eventually all that's going to shift into cloud, and SASE is going to become more of a endpoint / user type architecture versus traditional on-prem with SD-WAN and so on. Of course, it's going to take time, but looking at everything from a technology standpoint and how businesses, right, are adopting cloud, I think this is where we are heading. I think in the end, we're going to be concentrating on the endpoint and mobile users versus on on-prem, because the only thing that's going to be on-prem is inter-site connectivity, right, and some sort of direct internet access to connect those sites to the cloud.
Yeah, just one more question for me. What's unique about the Netrix approach to SASE?
What's unique? What we bring to the table is our in-depth understanding of not only network, right, network security, but also cloud, and also the ongoing management and support, right? From a network perspective, we not only concentrate on a specific product, we concentrate on an overall solution, right? So, like I said before, when we go in, right, we start with the envisioning, right, and understanding what the customer really needs versus the product itself, right? One critical aspect of that envisioning process that we go through is breaking down those myths, right? Making sure the customers truly understand what SASE is, right? And what it can do for them, what challenges can it solve for them, right? And then also our in-depth, experience, right? From an engineering standpoint, our engineers are not only typical network engineers, they're well-rounded network security engineers with a in-depth knowledge of the entire stack, right? And I think that's critical from a implementation standpoint, because you not only need to understand the network layer, but also security, and then also cloud architecture as well. So that's where Netrix comes in. Because of our in-depth understanding of all the different features around network security cloud, we can provide end-to-end services, not only from implementation, but also ongoing management and support.
And I'll expand on the ongoing management and support, because I think that is a key differentiator as well. Our team is really not, Sebastian's team going and deploying and walking away, flipping the keys over to the customers. In many cases, with the shortage of IT pros in the market today, and specifically security pros, some of the challenges are getting folks that can keep up with, the solution, the technology, help perform updates, help perform changes. These things are at the core of our business, is kind of helping keep customers, the ability of sleeping at night and making sure that these things are managed and operating. They are not overly complex, but as organizations choose to expand, to grow, to shrink, to change configurations, we really bring a lot of that expertise to operate and manage it moving forward as well. So they can really have peace of mind as their organization shifts with the times.
Yeah, and basically, our approach is, we want to partner with our customers, right? To make sure we can grow with them, right? We don't want to go in, do a simple implementation and walk away, right? We want to partner with them and build a relationship, helping them throughout the process, right? Like I said, SASE shouldn't be treated as a product. It should be treated as a journey. And journey shouldn't stop with just implementation, right? So that's where we come in. You know, our goal is to not only help our customers get there, but also partner with them and, you know, guide them through the process.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, again, that brings us to the end of my questions, but I did promise that we'd take some questions from the audience. I have a couple of here. So first question I have from our attendees: with SASE only being recently identified, again, 2019, how much has the pandemic culture shaped the core fundamentals of SASE?
Yeah, it goes back to my comments of early 2020, everyone bought more firewalls and compute for virtual desktop, right? It was all about connectivity. All right, just get me access to my applications. I don't care what it takes. We have to be able to still work. And many organizations went from a scale of maybe 10% of their employees were working from home to 90 to 100. And that's a huge challenge. And the problem is now we created this concept of what work from home looks like based on a gut approach, right? We got punched in the gut and we had to figure out something quickly to solve our issue. And we're hitting a point now where we have to refine that and think about hybrid work 2.0. We talked about in 2020 that new normal and this is what life's like, but a lot of people were trying out Zoom and Teams and WebEx, and they didn't know which one they were standardized on, or they're trying out VDI and VPN, and their access policies are all over the place. And we really have to start standardizing and think about hybrid work in a different lens than how we approached it last year. So the pandemic absolutely accelerated a SASE type model, but many folks didn't implement it correctly because they didn't have the time. They didn't really properly vet out the solutions. And now is our opportunity to take the time, recognize the business challenges, understand where the business is going over the next 3 to 5 years, where the applications are going to be residing, and then build our infrastructure and security policies based off of that long-term plan. Recognizing that we're likely not going to all come back into the office 100%, and that we have to come up with a proper hybrid work strategy long-term.
Yeah, and I agree, Dave. From looking at 2019, 2020, 2021 now, right? We've been approached to by a lot of customers, right? What do we do, right? Everyone's going home, right? How do you provide access? They've, like you said, right, spin up additional firewalls, buy additional licensing, buy additional bandwidth at the data centers, right? Just to provide ability to connect, right? Provide access. Now we are, 2 years into the pandemic. What do we do next, right? This solution, yes, it was good at the beginning, but it doesn't scale. It doesn't work, right? So I think what pandemic allowed or will allow is it will allow to change the way we think about cybersecurity in general and how we secure the environment, right? Like we said before, traditional thinking was just establish VPN, get them in, get them access to the service applications, anything they need. Now it's like, okay, so we got them in, right? But how do we scale? How do we secure? I talked to one of our customers a couple weeks ago. They're going into basically data center transition, right? They're moving everything to the cloud. They're starting implementing SASE from a VPN standpoint, right? Now, how do they actually go into the cloud? How do they provide a centralized, security model that they can use to not only secure the remote users, but also integrate that on-prem infrastructure into the, the next gen, access. And I think that's gonna change as we go through, right? Because like I said, a lot of organizations went through the process. They thought they're implementing SASE, but then they're like, no, this is not really SASE. So I think, as we go into 2022, I think a lot of organizations gonna start to realize that now is the time to rethink how we did things, 2 years ago, and how we're gonna do things moving forward.
And, I just to add one more point too, I mean, let's call it what it was. The pandemic was a time to, solve a problem by throwing as much spaghetti against the wall as you can and see what sticks the best. I think as both Dave and Sebastian both highlighted very well is that, now is the time to revisit, was that the right decision? Did that meet the business requirements? Was that just something done in haste and we're going to contract that for 6 or 12 months? Now is the time to really go back and do it right. And we're, finally, I think most of us are getting a little bit of breathing room to be able to do that and actually make that right decision versus, kind of that gut that we, did based on, some very trying times.
Yeah, one more quick question, please. In this work from anywhere environment we're in now, what are your thoughts on SASE's relationship with zero trust model?
Yeah, so I think something important to recognize with zero trust is it's a framework. It's not a product. Just as SASE is not a single product necessarily. And the core value around zero trust is about providing least privileged access across your entire environment. And we feed that through a number of different policy engines, right? And we have to get intelligence around the user and their behavior, the device and its health, the types of applications they're trying to access and the level of access that they should have. And with this model that applications live everywhere, trying to create a unified policy is very, very difficult when we handle it in an on-prem type control. So by using SASE, we can leverage that as an enforcement point to be able to handle our zero trust policies of that least privileged access. But I think something that's really critical to recognize is zero trust expands beyond just SASE. Quite honestly, SASE itself isn't a zero trust silver bullet. You have to be able to actually have application or workload security as well, and on-premise security for that east-west traffic flow as you're branch to branch, or folks that are going from one VLAN to the next. That's not going to touch a SASE type environment, as well as the actual endpoints itself. We need to be able to protect those. So SASE or zero trust expands much further than just SASE as a whole, but we can leverage SASE as a tool to fit a major piece of the puzzle in terms of that policy enforcement for zero trust.
Yeah, I mean, I'll expand upon that sentiment too. I mean, I think Dave said it perfectly, is that again, zero trust is the term of the year, maybe the last couple of years. And I think that, it is, potentially a portfolio, and SASE represents, in my opinion, a key piece of it. But I also think that it's probably also some of the ones that folks look at last, just because of some of the things that, both Sebastian and Dave covered earlier today, is just the fear of the unknown. And, sometimes sitting down and thinking about re-architecting a network, is a very large and, a scary effort. And, when in reality, a lot of the technology we talk about from a SASE perspective doesn't necessarily have to be that challenging right up front. And, I think that, SASE solutions in general are critical to getting in the right state. And as you start to see more client audits and assessments coming up, this is going to be a critical part to how they attest to their auditors and their customers that they are abiding by some of the recent, zero trust frameworks that have been released.
Yeah, I do agree, and I think with a SASE approach, right, implementing zero trust as part of that architecture, right, will allow businesses, customers to properly secure and get that step one right into the overall deployment. And then, like you said, right, SASE is just a small part into the zero trust approach, right? It has to be across the board, right? And you're going to have cloud-based application, you're going to have on-prem application, you're going to have on-prem users. So it's just a much bigger approach. But with SASE, it will allow customer to make that step one, right, and make sure they start protecting their applications and inspecting not only users, endpoints, and so on. So I think it is critical. It's a small piece, but it's very critical when it comes to the overall approach.
Very good. Sebastian, Dave, Rich, I'm grateful for you for your time and your insight today, for answering these questions. And of course, I also want to thank our attendees, because you took time out of your day to attend this webinar. We're grateful for that. And I do trust that today's discussion provided some excellent new insight to enable you and your organization to be even better prepared to tackle the SASE challenge in the year ahead. I look forward to seeing you in one of our upcoming sessions. Until then, for Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thanks so much for giving us your time and attention today.